This morning, we have exclusive information on law enforcement operations at Zip's Sports Grill locations all around the valley.
We obtained what appears to be a copy of a search warrant for at least one of the locations. It's, quote, for the purpose of interrogation and civil administrative arrest of illegal aliens. Now, as you guys know, agents were met with protesters at several locations earlier this week in the midst of backlash against the Trump administration's immigration crackdown.
So David is live outside one of the restaurants, breaking down some of the details that we know at this point. David.
Scott, Tess, good morning. And this morning, representatives for Zip Sports Bar, that has 15 locations, is responding to these federal raids that happened on Monday and when they could possibly reopen. Here's a statement from Zip saying federal officials have not shared any detail about the nature of the investigation with Zips. No charges or allegations announced. The sports bar chain says they're fully cooperating with law enforcement and working with attorneys closely to understand the scope of the inquiry. The Sports Grill company says its locations are currently closed, but they're working to reopen by the end of the week, adding it respects the right to protest, asking everyone to be mindful of the nearby businesses and employees. Arizona's family spoke with Brenna Fisher, a criminal defense attorney who is not affiliated with this case. Fisher tells us what typically happens behind the scenes after a federal agency raids a business and seizes evidence.
It's very likely that the attorneys for Zips are communicating with the government in some capacity. It's very likely that a U.S. attorney is involved at this point. And so the defense attorneys for Zip should be communicating with the federal prosecutors and talking about what evidence did they seize, what evidence have they found or do they expect to find, and what's going to happen next. Typically at this point, there's likely charges or an indictment coming down the pipeline.
Again, we're still waiting on that information on potential charges. And as Zip said themselves, they're not sure what exactly they're being investigated for. But the Department of Justice said on Monday that when these raids happen, we would have more information in the coming days. Scott and Tess, it's going to be a wait and see.